أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ويسألونك عن ذي القرنين قل سأتلو عليكم منه ذكرا إنا مكنا له في الأرض وآتيناه من كل شيء سببا فأتبع سببا حتى إذا بلغ مغرب الشمس وجدها تغرب في عين حمئة ووجد عندها قوما قلنا يا ذا القرنين إما أن تعذب وإما أن تتخذ فيهم حسنا قال أما من ظلم فسوف نعذبه ثم يرد إلى ربه فيعذبه عذابا نكرا وأما من آمن وعمل صالحا فله جزاء الحسنى وسنقول له من أمرنا يسرا ثم أتبع سببا حتى إذا بلغ مطلع الشمس وجدها تطلع على قوم لم نجعل لهم من دونها سترا كذلك وقد أحطنا بما لديه خبرا ثم أتبع سببا حتى إذا بلغ بين السدين وجد من دونهما قوما لا يكادون يفقهون قولا قالوا يا ذا القرنين إن يأجوج ومأجوج مفسدون في الأرض فهل نجعل لك خرجا على أن تجعل بيننا وبينهم سدا قال ما مكني فيه ربي خير فأعينوني بقوة أجعل بينكم وبينهم ردما آتوني زبر الحديد حتى إذا ساوى بين الصدفين قال انفخوا حتى إذا جعله نارا قال آتوني أفرغ عليه قطرا فما استطاعوا أن يظهروه وما استطاعوا له نقبا قال هذا رحمة من ربي فإذا جاء وعد ربي جعله دكاء وكان وعد ربي حقا صدق الله العظيم. In these ayahs of Surah Al-Kahf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have answered the question that was posed by the kuffar of Quraysh to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. As we talked about it in the previous sessions, that the background of the surah is the kuffar of Quraysh sent some people to the Jews of Medina Munawwarah to ask them questions about Islam or about the truthfulness of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and they told them 3 questions. So they came back to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam with those questions, and one of them was about a ruler who ruled the world and he traveled from east to west. What was his story? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned his story, and within that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also mentioned the story of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, because it is related to Dhul Qarnayn. Today inshallah we'll try to cover these 2 things. Number 1, who was Dhul Qarnayn and what was his mission, and number 2, who are Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts the ayah with this: يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذِي الْقَرْنَيْنِ. They ask you about Dhul Qarnayn, because that was the question that was posed to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't say that I will tell you the details of Dhul Qarnayn. In fact, He says, قُلْ سَأَتْلُو عَلَيْكُم مِّنْهُ ذِكْرًا. I will tell you something about him. Min means very little. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not tell us or anyone the full story of Zulqarnain. He told us just the important part of the story that could confirm the prophethood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, number one. And number two, will just give us the lessons that we need from this story, so we won't just take it as part of history, we will take it as lesson for us and for the ummah. And accordingly, there are a lot of things in the story of Zulqarnain that are not known, and we can never know them, because whatever we know about him was a sign of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's prophethood, that because he's a prophet of Allah, he was able to tell us that. So of course, no other prophet is coming to tell us more detail about Zulqarnain. So that's the limit, and that's the extent of information and knowledge we will have about Zulqarnain, whatever we know from Quran and the authentic ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The reason I mention this, because in the story of Zulqarnain and in the story of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, there are a lot of details that come from histories, and most of them they come from Isra'iliyat, which means narrations of the previous nations. That is, narrations of Jews and Christians, either from their books or just stories from them. Most of these Isra'iliyat we cannot depend on, because they are just some narrations, some stories, they have no authenticity behind them. The order of Islam about it is لا نصدق ولا نكذب. When we hear these stories, as long as they don't conflict with the Quran and the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we don't take them as a belief, and we don't reject them either. So we'll just take it as a story, just like many other stories from here and say, we'll just take them like that story. We won't have to reject them, but at the same time we won't take it as part of our belief that this is what happened. In fact, before going further, maybe very interesting, since I mentioned this, it just came to my mind, just clicked to my mind, that might be interesting to mention this also, that, you know, last weekend I wasn't here. So during my journey in the airplane, a woman was reading something about Bible, and I was reading Quran. That's in the airplane. So as I'm reading the Quran, she came to me, she approached me, and she asked me what was I reading. She was interested to know about what, she could figure out that it's some religious book. I don't know if she wasn't sure. So I told her that this is Quran, and told her a little bit about Islam. And she told me that she was reading a book about Bible. So I asked her if she had read the whole Bible. She said no. I said, what is it that you read from Bible? She said, I read just some stories of the Bible. I started asking her some questions about her Bible. She didn't know them. I asked her if she gets any chance and opportunity to study the Bible. She then told me that yes, she works for a church that works for as a missionary to preach their religion. And this is why she is having that book, so she can study more of it. So I found it very interesting that a person who have interest in her religion, and at the same time she wants to know more about others also, for whatever reason. So we started talking about the difference between Islam and Christianity, and things that are in common between Islam and Christianity. I won't go into the details of it, but a point that we are just talking about is that stories and narrations from Isra'iliyat. I said to her, one of the main differences also is, as we were talking about differences, that you have some stories about prophets. The way they have been mentioned, and the way they picture these prophets of Allah, the way they present these prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we don't agree with that, and we don't believe in that. Because they are trying to show that these prophets, wal-iyazu billah, they were committing some of the worst sins in the world. They were doing things that will make a person worse criminal in the world. And some of the lowest people in the world. Their followers may not do what they had been doing according to those stories. And the example was that Sayyidina Lut alayhi salatu wassalam, wal-iyazu billah, according to the stories of the Bible, Lut alayhi salatu wassalam, drinking alcohol, and then as he got intoxicated and was so badly drunk that he didn't know what he was doing, and wal-iyazu billah, had a relationship with his own daughter and had a son from her. Then Sayyidina Dawood alayhi salam, loving a woman and then sending her husband out to a war, and sending him in a place where he knows that he would be killed for sure. And this is exactly what happened. He was killed and he took over his wife. So we can see that not only adultery to the lowest and to the worst way, and that is with your own daughter. Number 2, killing, murder, and adultery. And if these people who were supposed to be the models and examples for the world will do something like this, then of course everyone else is free to do it, because if prophets can control themselves from doing these things, then who else is going to control himself? So this is what happens when we just take stories without confirming it with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So remember, sometimes these stories may be totally against our iman and our belief. They will be rejected, no doubt. Sometimes these stories may not be against the Quran and Sunnah. So, لا نصدق ولا نكذب. This is when that rule of hadith will apply. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us this rule, لا نصدق ولا نكذب. We don't confirm, we don't reject. It's a story. But one thing we need to remember, when we are talking about tafsir of the ayahs of Quran al-Kareem, then we have to keep some distinction between what is just a history, what is a story, and what is tafsir of the Quran. So, we can talk about stories as long as we keep that clear distinction that this story has nothing to do with the tafsir of the ayahs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, with this understanding, if we go over here in these ayahs of Al-Quran Al-Kareem, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about Dhul Qarnayn. From the ayahs of Al-Quran Al-Kareem, we learn Dhul Qarnayn was a virtuous person. Quran does not clearly state if he was a prophet or not. Accordingly, there is difference of opinion between the Mufassirin if Dhul Qarnayn was a prophet or not. But nevertheless, Quran tells us clearly he was a virtuous man. So, with the virtuous, we don't know the extent and the limit when was he a prophet or not, but he was a very virtuous person. And this from the very beginning would tell us that when some people try to relate the stories of Alexander the Great to Dhul Qarnayn and consider them as the same person, we will not approve of that. And this is why all of our Mufassirin have rejected it, because that person was not a Muslim. Forget about being a virtuous person. And the person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about was a virtuous person. A person who is doing things according to how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants him to do. And is inviting people to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whether as a prophet or as a virtuous man, we don't know. But he's inviting people to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Number 2, Alexander was not an Arab. That's for sure. This person, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Quran al-Kareem uses the word Dhul Qarnayn for him. This is the name used for him in Quran, Dhul Qarnayn. And Dhu means the one with, Dhu Mal, the one who has the wealth, Mal, wealth, Dhu Mal, the person who is the owner of the wealth, who has the wealth. So Qarn in Arabic language means a horn. So Dhul Qarnayn, a person with two horns. We know that since the word Dhu is an Arabic language, tells us that if the person, the name of the person or even the nickname of the person was Dhul Qarnayn, means he has to be an Arab. And therefore we find some poems. There's another way of tracing the history. There are some poems of some rulers of Yemen who used to be proud of being from the generation of Dhul Qarnayn, from the offspring of Dhul Qarnayn. And they used to say that our father, our great-grandfather was a person who ruled the world and he invited people to the deen of Allah and these type of things. So this is another difference between Alexander and Dhul Qarnayn, and that is this Dhul Qarnayn was an Arab and that person was not an Arab. The reason I'm mentioning this so that we can clearly keep some distinction between the stories people narrate about Dhul Qarnayn, Alexander, and the stories that we read of Dhul Qarnayn in Quran al-Kareem, and we don't start mixing up between these two people. A third difference that some of the historians and Mufassirin have narrated is that this Dhul Qarnayn was somewhere around the time of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. In fact, some of the Tabari and other Mufassirin have also narrated some narrations that prove that he met Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam and he did Hajj with Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. Whereas Alexander came much later, that closer to the time of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. So that will be another major difference between the two. So Rasulullah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنْ ذُو الْقَرْنَيْنِ, the question about Dhul Qarnayn. Dhul Qarnayn was a virtuous man. And as I was narrating that, what we learn about him from Quran al-Kareem, that a virtuous man who traveled from east to west, he went all the way to the end of the world in the east. And when he was over there, he met some people, he invited them to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he went all the way towards the west, and he went as far as a human being can get. After that, there was no way for him to get any further. No living beings and no human beings were able to, in those days at least, get any further than that point that he arrived. And he met some people over there also, and he invited them to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about these two journeys, حَتَّى إِذَا بَلَغَ مَطْلِعَ الشَّمْسِ Hatta idha balagha maghrib al-shams, he got to the east and west, far east and far west, went both corners. Now then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ثُمَّ أَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا, then he went on another direction. Now this other direction could be only one of the two. He covered two already. So now east and west is being covered, so either south or north. But Quran does not specify. There are narrations that talk about that he went towards the north, because there was a huge population of human beings towards the north. But Quran does not specify, and that is very important to know because of the thing that he will be getting into in that new direction. Mufassirin say that that might have been north. Quran did not specify it. So it might have been north, but there is still possibility of being somewhere else, some other direction, or in between these directions, southeast, northeast, somewhere. So we don't know what was that direction. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only says, ثُمَّ أَتْبَعَ سَبَبًا, then he went on another direction. When he went to that direction, he saw two huge mountains. On this side of the mountain, there were people, good people living, They are not Muslims. He invites them to the Islam, to the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these people start following Dhul Qarnayn. But then they complain that on the other side of the mountain, we have some people who are doing a lot of mischief. And these people, occasionally, they keep on coming to our town and they destroy everything. So could you help us somehow to protect us against those people? He said, sure. So these people offered Dhul Qarnayn some wealth, some money. Okay, we'll pay you tax or whatever in order for you to protect us against these people. He said, no, I don't need any of that from you. So what do you need? Dhul Qarnayn said, all I need from you people is that you do the work, you do the manual work, because there is a lot of work needed. As far as all the expenses that will occur during this construction and whatever work we have to do, I'll take responsibility of that. He took that responsibility and they started doing the work. So at these two mountains, between the mountains, he built a huge wall. That wall was made out of copper and metal, and was such a huge wall that these people were never able to climb the wall or break it or do anything to it. So they remained on the other side of the wall, and these people on this side, who were always having a hard time because of those people from the other side, and those were Ya'juj and Ma'juj. So these people were protected against Ya'juj and Ma'juj. Now, who are these Ya'juj and Ma'juj? And where are they now? Did they come out already? What is their description? There are some authentic hadiths that talk about them. And then, as I said, there are stories from the previous generations that talk about them also. But at this time, I will narrate a hadith which is in Sahih Muslim. This hadith tells us some detail of their background, when they would come out, and what they would do. Of course, in the light of this very authentic hadith, which is narrated in Sahih Muslim, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, the hadith is narrated in the authority of a Sahabi called An-Nawas bin Sam'an radiyallahu anhu. And this is the most detailed hadith we have in the authentic narrations, out of the authentic narrations about Ya'juj and Ma'juj. But it starts with some background. Nawas bin Sam'an radiyallahu anhu says, ذكر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم الدجال ذات غدا. One day, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam started telling us about Dajjal. فخفض فيه ورفع. And he told us so many things about him that we thought he may be just somewhere around our homes. When he talked about his fitna and how close his fitna is, and how he will be attacking people, and his fitna people will be just getting drowned in that fitna, and people will be going away, and how severe that fitna would be. So when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam started talking about all the details of Dajjal, Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in say that we thought that as if he's talking in so much detail and he's telling us how dangerous he is, it might be he's somewhere around us, and we were afraid that we will be attacked by Dajjal at any moment. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when he saw Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in little later in the day, he saw that all of them are worried. Each Sahabi he sees, their face, they are extremely worried. Some of them are crying, some of them you just see the worry on their face. So he asked them, how come you people are so worried? What happened today? They said, Ya Rasulullah, you told us about Dajjal. So we are afraid of his fitna. Now we don't know how to protect our iman, how to protect our souls from his fitna. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said to Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een, إن يخرج وأنا فيكم فأنا حجيجه عنكم. If he would come out while I'm alive, you don't have to worry. I will take care of him. But if he would come after me, فَإِمْرُؤٌ حَجِيجُ نَفْسِهِ, then every person is responsible for himself. وَاللَّهُ خَلِيفَتِي عَلَى كُلِّ مُسْلِمٍ. Allah will be helping me, will be helping each and every believer. And of course, that will be through the teachings of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, he will be a young man who will be one eye blind once he will come out. And there was a person in those days whose name was Abdul Uzza ibn Qatan. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, he resembles Abdul Uzza ibn Qatan. We don't even know who was Abdul Uzza ibn Qatan. We haven't seen him. So for us, it will make no difference. But for Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een, they had someone that they could see and picture how the Dajjal will look like. But it tells us something very clearly. And that is when some people try to prove that Dajjal is not a name of a person. This clearly tells us, if Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is telling Sahaba ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'een that you can go and see a person who resembles him, simply means he's coming as a human being. Nothing else. So, now here, before proceeding any further, I just like to remind of a point which is very important. Number one, there are two different things. One is Dajjal himself as a human being, as a person who would come out with his fitna. Number two, the fitna of Dajjal. Sometimes people, because of not being able to distinguish between these two things, they got mixed up and they considered the fitna as Dajjal. That's it. No, there are two different things. One is the fitna of Dajjal. The other thing is the Dajjal himself. The fitna of Dajjal, as we learn from the hadith, would start much before the coming of Dajjal, and as we see all of those fitnas and all the signs of those fitnas. This is the fitna of Dajjal. Now, this fitna will get to the peak of it once he would come out himself. That will be the peak of all of that fitna. From the hadith, we also learn that his fitna will be mainly with two things, attached to two things. Number one, wealth. Number two, he will use women for attracting men and getting them off the track. We see how these two things are being used for keeping people away from Allah and from the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this might be one of the reasons Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said in a hadith, the worst fitna, ما تركت بعدي فتنة أضر على الرجال من النساء. I am not leaving behind me any fitna that can be more harmful to any man than the fitna of being attracted by a woman. Falling off the track because of a woman. Now, of course, it doesn't mean Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is cursing at women. No. But he's telling us, for men, that you have to be careful. Don't fall into haram. This is what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is telling us. Don't fall into haram. And subhanallah, in those days, what was the maximum limits and the extreme of using women as a fitna that we could think of, and that they could think of in those days? I mean, bringing women out. But now, one woman is attracting millions of people throughout the world through her movies and everything else and that she's making. That one woman, her songs, her pictures, magazines, movies, that one woman is attracting and making thousands and millions of people lose their faith and fall off the track and commit sin. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, as if he was watching and seeing all of these things, and he's warning us, be very careful about it. This is why once when he saw a woman that came to the masjid and she had some dress that was attractive. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam got very upset. He said this was the thing that misled Bani Israel. This was the beginning step and the first step for Bani Israel to fall off the track. And because of the very same situation, when their women started coming to the masajid, in this type of situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cursed them. This is what Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said at that time, by saying it once. In another hadith, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, if a woman puts on some perfume and leaves home, she should go back home and take a shower. Take a shower just like she takes the fard ghusl, so that everything is clean and no man will be attracted by her smell. So, I was mentioning there are two different things. One is Dajjal himself, the other is the fitna of Dajjal. The fitna of Dajjal, according to the hadith we learn, will stand much before Dajjal himself. And we see that fitna of Dajjal. As I said, the fitna is related to two things, comes through two things. And from the hadith we learn that technology will be at its peak the time Dajjal will come out. And he will be at the peak of it, he will use the best technology ever possibly available to human beings in the world. To the extent, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, يَأْمُرُ السَّمَاءَ أَن تَمْطُرَ فَتَمْطُرُ. He will ask the skies to rain and it will start raining. To that extent, now they just forecast it. It won't be just a forecast. It will be telling it rain and it will rain. How to tell it? We don't know, Allahu A'lam. But it will be to that extent. And there are many other hadiths to talk about it. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is telling us about the coming of Dajjal, and then he is telling Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in that he resembles such a person whose name was Abdul Uzza ibn Qatan, to tell us that he will be a human being, a person that will come out, one eye blind. As we know that Dajjal is a name of a person, so at least this makes very clear that with all of this fitna, a time will come when a person will be just leading this fitna. A person will be leading the whole fitna throughout the world. We see that through the technology that we have nowadays, initially the whole world was transferred into like one building, became just like one building. Then the world became like one apartment, and now the whole world is just like one office. The whole world is just like one office. Through this internet, people are attached to any and every part of the world. And the whole world is just like one office. And now, the way people are planning is that there should be one person running the show in this office. The whole show should run by one person. It's going towards that direction, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the way he describes Dajjal, we can see that it will be in that direction, and then he will be the person who would want, at least, not necessarily he will succeed, who would want to rule the whole world. He will get through the whole world. He will go through the whole world. In the hadith, let's go back to the hadith. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, then he said, "Innahu faman adrakahu minkum." Now he's telling us, if he comes after me, faman adrakahu minkum falyaqra alayhi fawatiha surat al-Kahf. Whoever sees him after me should recite the beginning ayahs of Surat al-Kahf on him, and that person will be protected against him. this hadith is in Muslim, as I said. Of course, there are some other hadiths that talk about Dajjal coming out, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us to recite the beginning ayahs and the ending ayahs of Surah Al-Kahf. In some of the narrations, he asked us to recite the full Surah Al-Kahf, in order for us to be protected against the fitna of Dajjal. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, إِنَّهُ خَارِجٌ خُلَّةً بَيْنَ الشَّامِ وَالْعِرَاقِ. He will come out from a place between Syria and Iraq. فَعَاثٍ يَمِينًا وَعَاثٍ شِمَالًا يَا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ فَاثْبُتُوا. He will run right and left. O servants of Allah. This is the advice from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. يَا عِبَادَ اللَّهِ. O servants of Allah, فَاثْبُتُوا. Hold strongly to your deen. That will help you to protect yourself against that fitna of Dajjal. فَاثْبُتُوا. Hold strongly to your deen. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, he will remain in this world for 40 days. But, يَوْمٌ كَسَنَةٍ. First day will be equivalent to 1 year, will be as long as 1 year. The second day will be as long as a month. The third day as long as a week, and then rest of the days will be like normal days. Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in, subhanallah, look at their way. Right away a question came to their mind, Ya Rasulullah, then the day that will be like a year or a month, how would we perform our prayers in those days? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that perform the prayers by calculating the time for every 24 hours. Now, this was, subhanallah, this was another adab of Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in. They would ask the mas'ala, the ruling of the Sharia. But now, how can we do it? We won't know how the 24 hours came and gone. In those days, it was almost impossible, because all you know, the timing is through the sunlight. And if the whole day, if the day is equivalent to a year, then how would we know 24 hours? They didn't ask. That's it. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, this is how you do it. They said, okay, this is how we would do it once the time would come. Simply means, at that time you would be able to do it in this way. And we all know now that we have watches in our hands, we have watches all around us. That would tell us the 24 hours and calculate each day according to 24 hours and perform 5 prayers in 24 hours. And this also answers the question of many people who ask that what happens in the North Pole, where a day is just like 6 months, or 6 month day, 6 month night, and might be less and more some 10 places. So how those people are supposed to perform the salah, they should also calculate it. How to calculate it? According to the closest city to them that has the regular day of 24 hours, and they perform the salah. These people should follow the calendar of that city that is closest to them. Sometimes people, either jokingly or out of laziness, they might think that, okay, you know, in 1 year we have to do only 1 salah then. Or in 1 year we have to do 5 salah. So 5 salah, because day and night, in 1 day and night you have 5 prayers. And that day and night is of a year. So we will do only 5 salah. That's fine, we'll agree with them. Then let them fast during the month of Ramadan. So they'll have to fast for 6 months before they can break the fast. Because day is 6 months. So if they don't want to fast for 6 months, then it's better to do the salah according to 24 hours a day. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, then he started telling us the speed of Dajjal as he would come out. He said he will go so fast, just like a cloud that have air, a strong wind pushing the cloud. How fast that cloud keeps on traveling. Sometimes when you look at the cloud when it's traveling, going fast, and that is also, we see it in normal situations, but when there is a strong wind that is pushing it, it goes fast. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, this is how fast the Dajjal will be going. And in other words, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is giving the example of his speed by the cloud and the air and the wind. And then he says, within that time, Dajjal will travel the whole world with the exception of 3 cities that he won't be able to enter: Makkah, Medina, and Baytul Maqdis. These are the 3 cities that he won't be able to enter. He would go by Medina Munawwara, and he will try his best to get into Medina. But there will be angels that will be guarding Medina Munawwara, and they won't allow the Dajjal to get in there. A person would come out of Medina Munawwara, so he will find that as an opportunity to mislead the people that are around him. So he will get that person, and now he will ask the people around him, how about if I kill this person and then bring him back to life? Would you then believe that I'm your God? So they will say, sure, why not? Really, it was difficult to think how people would take a human being as a God. But looking at the situation, doesn't look like it's too difficult. That okay, whatever you say, as long as we get paid. So he will be asking people to believe in him as a God. And he would kill that person, then bring him back to life. That person, as he would come back to life, he will be laughing at Dajjal. And he will say, now I know for sure that you are the same Dajjal that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam have warned us against. And now, after you have done this to me, you can't do nothing else to me. And this will be the extent of his power, that he will bring that person back to life once, but he won't be able to do it the second time. So whatever methods of surgeries are there to put the person back, it will be only once. It won't happen the second time. Now that person will tell him that, no, I know that you are the Dajjal because I learned this also from our Prophet, that you will be able to bring people back to life only once. The Dajjal will attempt to do something to him for the second time, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not give him that power. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, now he will go to a town, and this is how he would go, town by town. And he would gather all the people of the town and will ask them to believe in him as a Lord. If they would believe in him, he would ask the skies to rain and the earth to bring a lot of growth and treasures, and those people will become very wealthy. And those who would not believe in him, the places where people would not believe in him, he would take all of their wealth away from them. And the wordings that are used in the hadith by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he would say to the town that, have all of your treasures follow me, and all the treasures will go after the Dajjal, and those people will be there empty-handed. They have lost everything they had. See the fitna of mal now? That he will be, through the mal, he will be trying to mislead people, that I will give you wealth. I will give you this if you believe in me. If you don't believe in me, you will lose everything. You won't have nothing. Sanctions all around. No one will be able to get you anything. You won't be able to get anything. All of the thing that you have will be taken away from you. It's not an easy test. This is why all the Anbiya were warning their ummahs about this fitna, that it's not easy, that if you see that you're losing everything that you have your family, you have everything, a lot of responsibilities, and you're losing so much, and you're losing all of your businesses, you're losing your bank balances, everything is getting frozen now, nothing that you can use. What can you do? So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, this is what will be going on in the world, and he will travel through the whole world. At that time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wassalam. Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wassalam will come down in Damascus at the minaret of the Jama Masjid of Damascus, in Syria. And then Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wassalam will be leading all the believers, and all the disbelievers will start going with Dajjal, and they will follow Dajjal, and there will be a war between Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, and Dajjal, which means between the believers and the non-believers. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says that kuffar will be just dying by the breath, by smelling the breath of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. And his breath will be having an effect on them as far as his sight goes. So as far as he can see, he can just blow and people will keep on dying. The kuffar will keep on dying. And finally, Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will kill Dajjal also, and after that people will have a lot of peace of mind. As they are enjoying the time and they're having a good time, they are celebrating that all of this kufr is gone, Dajjal is gone, they're having a good time, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send Ya'juj and Ma'juj. So that is the time when they will come out. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send Ya'juj and Ma'juj. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send a relation to Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wassalam, إِنِّي قَدْ أَخْرَجْتُ عِبَادًا لِي لَا يُدَانُ لِأَحَدٍ بِقِتَالِهِمْ فَحَرِّزْ عِبَادِي إِلَى الطُّورِ. That some people are coming out, no one have the power to fight these people. So all of you believers, go out in the mountains and wherever you can hide, go and just hide somewhere, because you cannot fight these people. These Ya'juj and Ma'juj, as they will come out, they will be coming from every hill, from every road, from every direction they will be coming. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam tells us in the hadith that they will be much larger in number than the rest of the human beings that live in the world. In fact, one of the hadiths that talks about their number, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, and that hadith is also Sahih Muslim, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He was explaining an ayah of Quran that says, يَوْمًا يَجْعَلُ الْوِلْدَانَ شِيبًا. The day of judgment will be a day that children will look like an old man because of the hardships of the day. So, Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in asked, Ya Rasulullah, what type of difficulties people will be going through on that day? Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, the beginning of it will be that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say to Adam alayhi salatu wasalam, أخرج بعث النار. Bring out the people of the hellfire. Put together the people of the hellfire. So they will ask, Adam alayhi salam will ask, وَمَا بَعْثُ النَّارِ? Who are the people of the hellfire? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will announce, مِن كُلِّ أَلْفٍ تِسْعُمِئَةٍ وَتِسْعٌ وَتِسْعُونَ 999 people out of every 1,000. 999 people out of every 1,000. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, فَذَلِكَ يَوْمًا يَجْعَلُ الْوِلْدَانَ شِيبًا. That is the day and that is the time when even children will look like an old man because of the hardship. They won't know if they will be separated from the believers and put out, because 1 out of 1,000 will be going to Jannah. So who would think that I would be that 1 out of the 1,000? Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim ajma'in started weeping. They got worried. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, the worry is not in this dunya, don't worry. Yes, the worry will come in akhirah. That's something we cannot help. But in this dunya, you should know that Ya'juj and Ma'juj are such large in number that 999 will be out of them and 1 out of you people. But of course, in akhirah, when that announcement is made, everyone will be afraid naturally. Now, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says these people will come, they will start killing every person, every human being they see in their way. So they don't want to see anyone other than them. They are human beings too. But they don't want to see anyone beside their own nation in the world. They just want their nation to exist. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in other hadith talking about the description, he says that they will be passing by a river, and the first group that will pass by that river, they will drink the whole water of the river, which means they are such large in number. And the second group that will come over there, they will look at the mud and they will say, oh, sometime there was a water in this river, and they will start eating the mud. in the river. Once they will travel the world, they will come and do as much mischief as they could in the world. They'll start killing people right and left. And now they can't see no one to kill. So they will say, we have killed all the people in the world. No one exists beside us in the world. Now they will start throwing their arrows or whatever, what type of weapon they will have. They will start shooting it towards the skies because they know that they have heard that there is Allah, there are angels. So they want to get rid of everyone in the heaven also, that they will be the only ones that will live. Subhanallah, a human being can never be satisfied with anything. When we start following our desires, that I want to be the leader, I want to be the king, I want to be this, then the person never stops at any limit. And these people, after killing all the human beings in the world, they want to kill even whatever ones that they cannot see. But let's kill everyone in the heaven. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will, as they will throw their arrows towards the skies, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala initially will ask the angels to apply some blood on it and throw it down and put it and send it down. So they will see, okay, we are killing those people. And gradually, there will be no more blood on those arrows. So they will say, okay, we have killed everyone in the heavens also. So no one exists beside us. Of course, this process will take some time. Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, along with all the believers of the time, are hiding out somewhere. So they will pray to Allah, Ya Allah, it's getting too difficult for us now. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send some type of disease to these Ya'juj and Ma'juj. And this large nation that will have filled the world, that large nation will have that disease start from their neck and will spread through the body, and they will start dying, and within no time all of them will be dead. Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam will receive the message, the revelation that these people are dead. So he will ask all the believers to come down and come out. Once they will come out, there will be no space to walk around the world because it's full of their bodies and it stinks. So now they will make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, Ya Allah, what can we do with these bodies? So many bodies and the whole world is full of it. Every inch, every place is full of their bodies. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send some type of birds. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says that these will be the type of birds that their necks will be just like the necks of camels, huge birds that will pick their bodies and throw them out in the oceans. But still, the earth stinks with their bodies being over there for a long time and dying out of that disease. So now again they will make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send a heavy rain that will wash out the whole world and everything will be clean. Now believers will start living peacefully. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam tells us, Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will live in this world for 40 years. He will live for 40 years. He will get married, he will have children also. And here we find this is the explanation of Ayah of Quran al-Kareem, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He mentioned the miracles of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, He said, وَيُكَلِّمُ النَّاسَ فِي الْمَهْدِ وَكَهْلًا. He talks to the people at young age, while He's infant, and in the old age. Everyone speaks in the old age. What's so miraculous about it? This is the miraculous part about it, that when He was lifted from this world, He was young. He wasn't old. So the miraculous part is that this ayah is telling us that He's coming back. He's alive, He's coming back. Will live for another 40 years. Will get to His old age and die the natural death. So this is what the Quran says, will talk to people in His old age. After this, as people will be living in peace, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them a lot of barakah. A lot of barakah, and especially those 40 days while Isa alayhi salam is there, 40 years while Isa alayhi salam is there, people will have a lot of barakah. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, one fruit will be enough for a whole clan to eat. And they will be milking just one camel, and the camel will be enough, the milk of one camel is enough to feed the whole town. This is how much barakah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put in everything. This is what we learn from the authentic hadith about Ya'juj and Ma'juj. They're coming. Then there are some narrations that say that there is a narration in Sunan Nasai and Tirmizi that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, these people keep on licking that wall that Zulqarnain have built. And whichever way, I mean, it's a way of explaining they're licking it, how, wallahu alam. And every day they get a little hole made in it that they can see some light through it. So they say, okay, it's the end of the day, tomorrow we'll come back and we'll make a bigger hole and we'll come out. But next day when they come back, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts the wall back the way it was, and they start the whole process all over. But the time when it's assigned for them to come out by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that day their leader will say, tomorrow insha'Allah we'll finish this hole and we'll be able to come out. As he will use the word insha'Allah, then that hole will remain there, and next day they will make the bigger hole and they will come out of it. And then they will come out, they'll start doing everything that we just read in the hadith. There are some hadiths that talk about more description of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, but very similar to this. There is a hadith when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam narrated this detail about how people will be destroyed and how there will be Ya'juj and Ma'juj will be committing mischief in the world. Zainab radiyallahu anha asked, Ya Rasulullah, afa nahlaku wa fina salihun? Would Allah destroy us through the punishment? In spite of having virtuous people around us, we will have some virtuous people for sure. And this is the promise of Allah, that there will always be some virtuous people around. So Ya Rasulullah, in spite of having those virtuous people around, we are still going to be destroyed by that punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, yes, إِذَا كَثُرَ الْخَبُثِ, when there will be abundance of evils all around, fitnas all around, sins all around, then yes, in spite of having virtuous people, you people will be destroyed by the punishment of Allah. Then people will be resurrected on the day of judgment according to their deeds and their iman, but they all will be destroyed by that punishment. There are some other narrations that talk about, and these are some, as I said, Israeliyat, talk about the description of Ya'juj and Ma'juj, that having ears as long as their bodies, and they sleep on their ears, and they cover their body with the other ear, and these type of things. There are a lot of these type of things that, wallahu alam, we don't say anything about it. We know that they are human beings just like other human beings from the narrations. So Ya'juj and Ma'juj are human beings like other human beings. It's a nation of human beings. Another very important question that comes is, where are they now? Where are Ya'juj and Ma'juj now? And especially at a time when people are trying to convince us that we have seen the whole world. We have been to every place of the world. And we haven't seen any such nation. We haven't seen a nation who's separated from the world by a wall and they can't just come out of it. So where are Ya'juj and Ma'juj now? Some people try to say that that nation had already come out, but as we saw from this very authentic hadith, that they will come after the time of Dajjal, during the time of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salatu wassalam. So still then, we are back to the same question, where are they now? That question, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is why I told you at the beginning, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talked about Zulqarnain going east and west. And then he says, Summa atba'a sababa, then he went to a direction. He does not specify that direction. What direction was that? We don't know. Where are these people now? We don't know. All we know that they are somewhere. And they are at a place from where they are not able to get to the rest of the world yet. And they will come out. This is something that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling us. Yes, Zulqarnain traveled all the way from east to west. We believe that we can travel further than what Zulqarnain went. And of course, if people nowadays and scientists nowadays are trying to convince us that they have seen the whole world, we'll tell them, we are sorry, there might be a little more for you to see in the future. And this is what all we can say, that still there will be some other place for them to see. and there will be more place for them to see. And that will be the place from where Ya'juj and Ma'juj will come out. Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala a'lam wa ilmuhu atam. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.